Hello, everybody, and good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. So the Hoosier Environmental Council is a nonprofit organization in Indiana that advocates for a healthy environment. So we work on a variety of environmental issues across the state, including things like coal ash disposal, wetland and water quality protection, environmental justice, and agriculture. So this webinar that we're hosting today is part of HEC's agriculture program, which envisions a more sustainable food system in our state. So we're really excited to have Hunter on today and to talk about regenerative agriculture and all of the great things he's doing. So with that, we will go ahead and introduce our speaker.
Let me actually do a quick introduction, Susie. Sorry, I apologize. Hunter, I'm going to cut you off real quick. Hunter, actually, for those of you who may know him or may not know him, he has a man of many talents, but one of the things that he does very well is actually he's an excellent writer. And for his farm, WonderTree Farm in Zionsville, he has a great newsletter, e-newsletter that if you haven't signed up for before, please, I encourage you to do so. I'm going to read one of his recent emails that I think really says a lot about who Hunter is, who WonderTree Farm is, and why HEC is very excited to present him today. And just again, as a quick reminder, if everybody could keep their videos off and themselves on mute just during Hunter's presentation, that would be great. So this is called Death, Affection, and Quitting. 2 days before this past Christmas, we had a catastrophic event here in the Midwest. The temperature dropped to -9 degrees and the wind sped up to as much as 50 miles per hour. For several days prior, livestock farmers scurried around sourcing straw while moving flocks and herds in or near shelter. We brought our entire flock of 600 laying hens into the barn in their mobile coops, closed the doors, and put heat lamps on them. We bedded our cows and pigs heavily and sheltered them from the wind. My friend Peter Wagner, who raises the cows who produce the dairy items so many of you love, took similar measures on his farm. Unfortunately, when the weather finally relented, our hens decided to hold onto their eggs. Their boycott lasted a month, and even now that they are laying again, they aren't back to full capacity. But Peter had a rougher go of it. 4 of his beautiful crossbred cows experienced significant frostbite on their udders. At an industrial dairy, they would have immediately given these cattle a death serum, forklifted their carcasses onto a hazardous materials truck, then sent them off for your tax dollars to pay for their disposal. Peter and his sons nursed his injured cows for weeks until it was obvious that they could not recover. 4 cows may not sound like a lot, but remember that this is not a factory farm. 4 cows is a 30-gallon-a-day loss for the Wagoners. Thankfully, Peter has sourced 4 more cattle and has 5 others that will freshen or give birth this month, so better days are ahead. When you support farms like WonderTree or Wagner Dairy Farm, you're partnering with real people on real places with real visceral relationships to their animals and food. We don't absorb losses into vast volumes of production and revenue. No, they are much more than a line item. While they may be replaced, they cannot be recovered. Losses, however, will never make us quit. And this is our commitment to you. No matter how cold the winters or dry the summers, we will never stop offering our very best care and affection in order to raise the very best food you can source. We'd rather die than quit. Quitting is not a luxury any of us can or want to afford. Count on it. I think it says it speaks of Hunter beautifully, and I will hand it over to him.
Thank you, Jenny. I appreciate it. It's good to be with you all today, and I've not done a lot of Zoom work, but the little that I have done has helped me fall into the fortunate groove of feeling like I actually am with a group. At first, that was very hard, but here today, seeing you all log on and kind of having an idea of the size of the group, and just knowing that there are probably a lot of shared values on this group, I do feel at home, and I do appreciate you having me. I wanted to just for a couple of housekeeping items before we jump into the meat of things. I want to let everybody know that first of all, I am humbled that anyone would ever ask me to do something like this. I am nothing but the pieces of a lot of other people who have poured into me. I'm not special. I don't carry with me some kind of supreme idea about what I do. I always think there's nothing worse than a self-righteous green farmer. And so I don't want to be one of those. That's off-putting. And we want to be strong advocates for nature, strong advocates for the proper and healthful treatment of this earth. And if we are to be that, we need to be humble. We need to understand that a lot of people have gone on before us, and we need to be open to dialogue and to change and to understanding new things. And that's why I'm here today. At a certain point in my life, I became open to some new ideas, to new perspectives on agriculture in particular. And so it is just, I want y'all to know, I don't stand here as an expert, and I would actually encourage anyone here, if you do find someone who says they're an expert on stuff like this, make sure that you leave that Zoom call, because those people, experts, are really kind of a bad thing when you get into this space, because someone who thinks that they know everything is very dangerous. It's very reductionistic to think that you do know everything. So I want to start there. I also want to start along the lines of who I am, by just kind of trying to diffuse something. I'm an ex-football player. I played in the NFL for 12 years. And there are a lot of things about me that could be disqualifying, just based on that reality in my past as it pertains to entering into the agricultural space. I would just encourage you, if you will, if you have any kind of an issue with my past, with whether you think it's because I've made a lot of money or because I was a part of some kind of a massive industry that had to do with professional sports, which is a very, very mixed bag of good and bad things. I would ask you to give me a chance today and let me share my heart, share my mind, share my experiences. I'll share my family with you here today. And I really believe that it is my calling to farm. I think that is not too strong of a word. I think that a lot of people, in particular people of faith, do hide behind things like it's my calling, and it kind of gives them license to do whatever they want to do. That is not the case here. I feel something else driving me, some kind of a real sense of calling. This is what I was made to do. And the essay that Jenny just read, I believe that I won't quit. I would say death before quitting. And I do say that to our customers, that they can count on that. This is something that I want to do with my life. To give you just a little bit of background on who I am, I came from a ranch in Texas. I was raised by two wonderful parents with two siblings. I was the youngest of three. My dad worked in a factory, and he also ranched cattle on our 1,000-acre ranch. That may sound very, very large. It's just a little thumbnail in Texas. My mother was a wonderful mother. She could have done anything she wanted to do. She chose to stay home and to raise her children. That was her dream, and that was what she wanted to do. And she's still alive. My father passed in 2020, but my mother is a woman who could turn the world upside down, and she certainly did through raising her children. She did a great job, especially on my older two siblings. I don't want to say she did too good of a job with me, but the jury's still out on that. I guess I would say this as a prepared statement toward you being here today. If you came today with a heart for nature and agriculture and a desire to humbly learn from the many mistakes of another humble person, and I'm not humble by nature, I'm corrupt, just like everybody has dark areas of their life. But in the sense of farming, I do believe that humility may mark me, just because farming will humble you. I want to congratulate you on being here today to learn about agriculture, to learn more about nature, to grow in your understanding of this place and our best stewardship of it. You're a part of a great comeback if you're interested in these things. Humanity has driven itself into a deep ditch. And in that ditch, we're wading in the muck of our own worst practices, technological hyperdevelopment, disease, and mental illness. If you don't take anything else from our time, I want you to take this. Being human means being native to this place. We are native organic creatures to Earth. And there is a sense, especially with a lot of folks in the pro-environment community, that we are aliens, that we are purely parasitic in our relationship to the earth. And while I admit that has been the case, especially over the past 100, 150 years, I would argue that our true nature is to be native and to give back and to be regenerative in the cycles of nature. And that's why we call ourselves a regenerative farm. Regenerative farming is a very traditional form of agriculture with a fancy name. Regenerative means that whatever we do, we try to put more in the ground, add more to the ecological community than we take. And so we regenerate through our practices. This is the place we were given to practice regenerative practices. That's what we do here on earth. And we have failed at this. We have failed at being human, at being native to our environment. And we're paying dearly for it. A Harvard study that was just released of 18 to 29-year-old people found that, and they really got into some deeper into it than this, but these are the broad points over it statistically. This study found that 68% of young people, I would say, 18 to 29, I call that very young, report to having low energy. 59% report to having difficulty sleeping. 52% find little pleasure in living. 51% of them are depressed. 49% have little appetite. 49% of them overeat. 48% have trouble concentrating. And 28% have thoughts of self-harm and suicide. Now, folks, we spend more money on healthcare than any developed country in the world. And yet we lead the world in incidences of ADD, ADHD, cancer, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, osteoporosis, and all of the other autoimmune diseases, including the one that took my father's life in 2020. This is a crisis. It is an emergency. It has everything to do with what we are eating, how we are treating the earth. It has everything to do with things that are so esoteric as care and affection. I believe that hearts of people have to be changed to not reduce beings to mechanistic, just structures to be manipulated. We need to be the type of agricultural community that believes, again, that life is life. Human life, animal life, ecological life, biological life, deep in the soil. These things are alive, and they deserve our best care and affection, our best stewardship. We have a hierarchy of values at our farm. We value people first. We value land second. We value animals third. And that does not mean that that is no indicator of our love for the three necessarily, although we do value people supremely. We believe that. We just believe that if you value people and you value land and you value animals in that order, you will do right by all three of them. You will do best by all three of them. And so that's who we serve, very simply, at WonderTree Farm. I want to reintroduce today and expand on some values: the economic value of thrift, the social value of community, the emotional and relational values of care and affection, like I just mentioned, and the ethical value of hard work. And we're going to take some questions at the end. And some of this I will move through some of my pictures and slides here. They're fun, but I want to get into the meat of things. So WonderTree is a regenerative farm. It's called WonderTree after a 340-year-old live oak tree that is on the back of the property. This tree has a great story. I don't know of it. I don't know all of it because I was not there for it. But you can rest assured if something is that large, it has seen its fair share of animals that have slept under it, millions of them. It has had squirrels, generations of squirrels that climbed in its branches. It was 180 years old at the Civil War, so it stands to reason that Union soldiers could have camped underneath it. There are all kinds of wonderful things that you can sit in front of this tree and consider and wonder about. And that is why, as a family, we named it the WonderTree, because you could sit there and think for, in 340 years of life, what did it encounter? Now, unfortunately, the WonderTree chose to pass away in this little period of time where my family has lived on this farm. When we bought the farm, the WonderTree was starting to decline. It started to thin with its flowering and everything. It's a white oak tree. I don't know if I mentioned that. And we kept it here. We hung a swing from it. We let people take pictures in front of it. It was a fixture, and that is actually on the logo, an artist rendering of it. It doesn't do any justice for the scale of it. If I was standing in front, if our artist had drawn me in front of that, I would just be a little diminutive looking figure. It is a huge, huge, massive thing. Three big grown people can't join hands and wrap their arms around the trunk of it. So I'm going to share a little bit later what's going on with the WonderTree now, because we believe it does have new life now that its first life has ended. But I will share that later. This first picture I'm going to share with you is one that I stole off the internet. Let's get here. And that is me 16 years ago. And the reason I swiped that one from the internet is, and I let them keep their logo, their Getty Images thing on it. That is because it shows where I was in 2007. I was at the Super Bowl. That's the Super Bowl logo there on my jersey. You can see how unnaturally dark my beard was in those days, and here we are able to scrutinize that little variable in my life, just age, everything changing, everything getting older, processes happening that are just out of our control. And you can see my hand. I'm saying that everything is a-okay, that I am here, and I'm at the Super Bowl, and I'm 30 years old, and everything's just fine. And that's how everything was. I thought that my life was in really, really, really good shape. And I just knew very surprisingly little at that stage of my life. And I don't want to stay on this picture too long because it's embarrassing, but it's an important starter for us, because I had no idea what the next 16 years would hold. My kids were very, very young. My wife and I were young in our marriage. We married a few years before this, and we had one child at this point, and now we have four, and I'm going to move and introduce you to the rest of our family. This is a Smith clan now on our farm. That is my wife there. She's the lady in the picture, and her name is Jen. To our right of Jen is my oldest son, Josiah. He was alive at the Super Bowl. On the far left, that's my second son. His name is Samuel. And then the little girl there in the very middle of the picture, that is Lydia. And she is not little anymore. She's 12, and she's very tall. And this was just a year or so ago. And everybody, it just seems, if you have children, you understand what I mean. Everybody has just changed so much. And then the little guy up by me, that's Bo. He is our fourth. And they are 18, 15, 12, about to be 13, and 10 years old. That's the group. So when they were young, very young, I started to have a real uneasy feeling about life. I was retiring from the NFL. I did not know what I wanted to do. I did not want to be like the other 80% of NFL football players are divorced and or bankrupt within 2 years of retirement. And that's the part they don't show you when they're, showing the United Way commercials. That this just doesn't go very well for a lot of guys post-career. The reason it does not go well is because we've been playing a sport since we were 8 or 10 years old. And when you're 25 to 35 years old, and the world kind of releases you out and says, here, take your degree or not your degree or whatever, or a degree that isn't worth much. Take this life where you have given everything to a sport and just pivot with your family and move into something else. That doesn't go real well. You give a guy a lot of money for a real short amount of time early in his life, and it's very, very hard. He doesn't have a purpose, and he's kind of left stranded out there trying to figure out what he's supposed to do. And that's where I was. My wife sensed this, so long story short, I'm not going to drag you through all of the gory details, but she really sensed that I needed to, in a sense, figure out what's next. What does Hunter need to do to move forward, to lead our family, to be a good father, to be a good husband, to be healthy, really. And so she sent me off on a retreat, and all by myself, with like no other people, to this little log cabin in southern Indiana. And I spent 2 or 3 days there by myself, just thinking through things, working through the pros, the cons, the this, the that. And I came back, and I really had a sense that we needed to transition our life in an agricultural direction. I was born and raised on a cattle ranch. Everything good about me, if there is anything that is redeemable about me, it was imparted through the medium of agriculture. People raise wonderful children in neighborhoods. They do great work. As parents, we have wonderful friends who live in neighborhoods and out on farms and everywhere in between. But for me, having been raised the way I was raised, I had a very, very hard time figuring out how to raise children in a neighborhood. And this is not a matter of me controlling things and making us be a farm family. It's more a matter of, I don't really know how to be a good dad in this environment, because I only saw one model growing up of a dad, and it was a farmer, and he did a wonderful job, but we were in that place, in touch with nature, learning hard lessons, learning how to work hard. So we moved to a farm. Long story short, there's a lot of steps between that retreat and us being where we are now. But we moved out onto a farm that we bought in a land auction. We had no idea what we were doing. I really had no idea. I just wanted my kids to be around animals. I was thinking the way a lot of people have started thinking since 2020. So we bought a farm, we built a house. I built the barn. I didn't design it to do any particular function. I just thought, we have a farm, which we didn't. And now, of course, we need a barn. And so I built the barn. I built it out of metal. I built it with huge doors. Built it, just kind of a free span space. I put some concrete down in some areas of it. That was, and then we got a chicken coop, and I started raising chickens for eggs. And it turns out that chickens, they lay a lot of eggs. I thought maybe, at the time we probably should have had 6 or 8 birds. I bought like 20, and that ends up being almost 20 eggs a day. And so, but out of that mistake of overstocking chickens, we started to have so many eggs that our friends would come over and say, "Hey, what are you doing with that huge bucket of eggs on the counter?" And we would start giving them away to people. Well, as it turns out, and these weren't special eggs, these were like buy feed at Tractor Supply, chicken coop, enclosure kind of thing. They weren't pastured or anything. But as it turns out, if you raise anything at home, it's better than what's at the store. And so we started giving them away, and people started to love them. I want to make sure that I'm not getting too far ahead of myself. So we started to give them away, and people started saying, "Hey, these are so good, you should sell them. Don't let us." Actually, one of my close friends here in town said, "Don't let me take these anymore. Let me pay you $3 or $4 for them a dozen." So it was kind of all born out of someone insisting that they pay for the eggs. And so I continued to learn about raising food for yourself. I knew that I wanted to be healthy. I knew I wanted my family to be healthy, and I knew that I wanted them to take part in the production of food just for our family. I had no interest in being a businessman, an agribusinessman, or a regenerative farmer. I didn't know what any of these things meant. And so the next step after raising laying hens was raising broiler hens. We raised a bunch of broiler hens. Those are meat birds, and those came to full age, and we had them processed, and it was the best chicken we'd ever had, and we had so much of it that we started to sell those too. And gradually, I'm going to start scrolling through my slides here, because the story will kind of unfold through that. More things began to show up here with heartbeats. that were food producing animals. And we started to learn more. I got connected to a guy named Joel Salatin that I would recommend if you don't know who that is. He is kind of the nation's leading regenerative farmer. He has become a friend of mine. He's a guy very interesting. I didn't think that this would happen, but I just reached out to him as a farmer one day and asked him if I could come to his farm and shadow him. I wanted to learn from him. He said, "Sure, come on out. We're open. You're welcome to come anytime." And I said, "Great." I started looking at my calendar and planning on a time to go out and visit with Joel. And that was like 7 or 8 years ago. And I haven't had a spare moment now that I'm farming since then to go out there. But he's great on an email, and he has published some of my writing in Stockman Grass Farmer Journal, and has been just a really bounce some ideas off of him. I send him my writings. He's been a good mentor, even though we've never actually shaken hands. He's a good man. So way back when we were building the house out here, we bought this guy. His name was Arnie. And Arnie was really the gateway into having animals. We were, to give you an idea, and just so that you know that everything can change in your life very quickly, we never really had pets to speak of, long-term pets that actually worked out for us at all prior to Arnie. We had a couple of dogs when our kids were very young that we had to rehome. We had a snake and a hamster and all the stuff that we try out. But Arnie is a Maltese, and he was the first animal that we fell in love with, and he's still here. He's 8.5 years old. And he really was the first thing that we raised and we enjoyed, and that became a part of the culture of our life. And if you come to WonderTree right now, you will meet Arnie. He's there at our store when we open. This is the kind of scale that we had early on when we would collect eggs every 2 or 3 days. You can imagine that one family thinking we're raising our own food just really didn't, we weren't able to consume all of those. This picture was taken just a little bit after we started selling them out of our farm, but that was kind of the 2 or 3 days worth of laying. This was, and again, I'm going to move quickly through these because some of this is just not interesting to folks here, but it gives you a little bit of the story. Joel Salatin has these pastured chicken huts that he moves across his pastures, and he recommends that you build it like this. This is where Joel and I differ. I built this and it did not work out well for us. I couldn't get the chickens to move forward. So you ended up always having to crawl in there and move them forward when you drug it, or you were going to drag it across the chickens and kill them. So we didn't want to do that. So that didn't work out for us. This is an important picture because this kind of shows you where we got to after starting to sell eggs, starting to sell broiler chickens, just to neighbors. That was how the whole thing started. Demand, not online, nothing like that. People just started asking about it. And for some reason, around the middle of the year, we decided we would just open our home driveway and welcome people to the barn and say, "Hey, come on Saturdays, 10 to 1. We have eggs, we have desserts, we have lemonade, and your kids can feed goats and hold chickens and pet cats." Everything was it was not put together very well. It was just kind of like basically a community event. And that very first day, 5 families showed up, then 7 or 8 families showed up the next week. And by the time we got to the fall of that year, which is about when this picture would have been taken, and we have the pumpkins out, we had about 300 people showing up on Saturdays. People were just so interested in farms again, being around farm animals, being out in the country. And we kind of just put this out there as come have an unregulated day in the country, in a world completely regulated. Come and enjoy an unregulated day in the country. I would welcome people in the door and I'd say, "There's the goats, there's the baby chicks, there's the fill in the blank, there's a horse." And with that, I would tell them, you are free to go wherever you want and do whatever you want. No one will bother you here. And as it turns out, no one will bother you here is a really, really good way to market a farm. Have them come out and tell them no one's going to bug you. Parents be parents. Kids listen to what your parents say. don't abuse anything, shut the gate, and enjoy yourself. And that really worked well. People wanted to be a part of that. So that was farm day at WonderTree. That was Saturdays from 10 to 1. Soon after that, we built this is just kind of giving you an idea of the scale. You can see there on the left, we had our pricing board. My wife, Jen, she started a little side hustle called Jen's Hens Bakery. She was making desserts and stuff and would cook those. And it was really, bake those up, and people loved them. And this was we took some old basement furniture from another house and made this little stand. And this is still where, if you come to WonderTree, you will buy underneath this sign. I put this in there because Coach Dungy was there one day, and I was like, dude, he made fun of me because as a punter for the Colts, I didn't get a lot of reps. Some of you may be football people or not, but being a punter on a Peyton Manning led offense means you have plenty of time to dream and think of other things. And so he would always he would make fun of me because I was always writing, or I was writing music, or I was playing music, or doing some other artistic endeavor in my free time. And this was right after he walked in the barn, and he looked around and he goes, "Now, Hunt, I saw a lot of things in your future, but I didn't see this. You have really done something here." Kind of making fun of me, kind of in Tony's way. That's kind of how he compliments you. So that was a real fun night. This gives you a little closer look at kind of where we were in the beginning. It really was kind of smoke and mirrors. You can see back there, we probably have about 20 dozen eggs for sale. We have some desserts, some bottled waters, and we have some coolers with the broiler chicken that we raised. And that was kind of the way the whole thing worked. It was just kind of a come out, hang out, and this kind of setting with this few items available would bring 300 people in. And after 30 minutes, when all the stuff was gone, people were still coming. It was free. It was a private party at our house every Saturday, 10 to 1. Come on in and just enjoy yourself. Hospitality just goes a really long way. And I want to reiterate for those of you who are new to the group today, that you are listening to someone who is not an expert. I am a humble farmer. I'm not humble because I say I'm humble. I'm humble because nature will make you humble if you engage with it through agriculture for long enough. So I've made a lot of mistakes, and I do not stand here as an expert. I'm just giving the story of WonderTree, the farm that we live on and work here in Zionsville. That is Bo. That is my youngest son, and that is his that is his hustle. He sells feed cups for $1 each, and this is the biggest hit on the farm. People come and buy a Dixie cup full of oats. Pretty much everything that can eat oats on the farm gets fed on farm days. The dogs obviously don't, but that's his little thing. We have other things for the other kids to do. Josiah works the gate. He helps people with parking. Sam is the swing man. He does the gate. He also helps with feed cups. He also helps with waivers on horse rides, which is what I'll show you in a little bit. And my daughter, probably the least agricultural thing, but quite a deal for the ambiance. She is the cotton candy queen. So we bought her a cotton candy machine. She makes cotton candy. The whole place smells like cotton candy on farm days. And she's just beautiful back there spinning cotton candy for kids. And it's a lot of sugar, and don't hate us for that. It's just it's a fun thing. It's a treat for a lot of people on a Saturday. This gives you an idea early on of the kind of situation we were in on the books. People would come, and I didn't even know what I was doing. I just would add up their stuff. And then I had a Square reader on my phone, and I would take credit card or cash. And then they would write down their email, and I would add their email. We would hand jam all the emails. And we hand jammed. I don't want to say this arrogantly at all. It started off with us entering well over 2,000 emails that people were approaching us with, wanting to know more about the farm. And so that email may seem like an inefficient way of operating with social media these days. We don't have social media. If you find a social media page for WonderTree, it's something someone else made. We haven't done that. It's all through an email list. If you go to WonderTreeFarm.com, you can see kind of a more extensive view of things as they are today, and you'll get asked if you want to be on the email list. And that is just me sending emails for all of you. It's not anyone, it's not some evil genius out there sharing your information or your data or anything like that. That's how we started with our communication. And that's how we started with our cash register. It's all pretty funny to me now. This is how we started out in the pasture. After that first group of broiler hens, these are broilers, and you can see around my feet, this was a corn and bean field. We made it a point that we were going to see if we could grow grass from nothing, so not seeding anything on our farm. And we didn't seed. We just went out there and let the ferns and the junk, grow up from the ground, whatever was in the seed bank, which was clover and cuckleburs and lots of sticky things. But we were committed to, just putting animals out there with a light footprint first. We didn't want to put cattle out there the very first year. So we put these birds out, and turns out they would eat all kinds of stuff, microorganisms, grass. We were working toward getting the latent seed bank accessible through accentuating organic matter. We wanted the organic matter to be fed. We wanted to give it the most bioavailable nutrients through the chickens, through their poop, which is an incredible source of nitrogen. And that really did speed up. It sequestered a lot of carbon. It fixed a lot of nitrogen. And we began to see remarkable things happen on something that had been doused in glyphosate. These fields were doused in glyphosate and all kinds of other things for not years, but decades prior to this. And so it actually started to work. Green things started to come up out of the ground. This gives you a little closer look at where we were. You can see around their feet there, just kind of how drab things were in those days, how thin they were, but we were committed to it. And we were moving these guys all along the field. Everywhere we went, you can see back there, that's an egress window that we laid down on its side as a little hut for them to get under. That's obviously not the only one. We had lots of those out there with them. That was the way we were doing things. We were trying to be light footprint, not a lot of tires, not a lot of tractors, not a lot of stuff like that. Just moving little feeders that we made from stuff we had laying around. I've made it really one of my missions to adopt thrift as a value. We don't buy new things unless it's just a better idea to buy it new. We try not to buy expensive things. We don't have a significant amount we have a couple of tractors, but we don't have huge combines. We don't have all kinds of heavy equipment. We don't want to compact the ground. We try to stay light. We try to stay mobile. That's kind of how regenerative farms work best, light and mobile. This is the next stage. You can see we still have weeds, but they're starting to grow a little thicker, and we got out of the red birds. You can ask me about that later if you want to, and into white birds. These are a little faster growing. The red birds grow like over 12 to 14 weeks, and they will really break your pocketbook. You won't be an effective farmer if you don't grow birds that grow a little faster. And we really like these. They're still what we raised. This was the environment we were raising them on. They were free range as you consider having them enclosed in a fence to keep predators out. This was a good iteration of broiler production on our farm, but it was not best. We continued in this direction. You can see there we have more of the egress windows. You can see little ropes laying across the top of them. We would drag those the full length of themselves every day, move their waters, move their feed. And it was just a kind of a slow, small thing, but we got up to where we were raising about 200 with this kind of a model. And I had never seen this model before. I kind of just dreamt it up, and it was good. It was not, again, I've learned a lot. It was not great. The winter after that first year of doing farm days at WonderTree, I bought a very inexpensive horse that was dead broke, and brought that to the farm, and it became just a favorite pet here for everyone. And at a point, we began to offer farm day at WonderTree on Saturdays from 10 to 1 to offer rides on this guy. His name is Sherman, and it's estimated that Sherman has given somewhere around 15,000 first horse rides to kids in the community. We are not high-end horse people at all. Everything we own, all the tack we own, is is used, to say the least. I am our farrier. I work on their feet. We just try to be very, very cheap with our horses. They're wonderful and happy. You can see that guy's in great condition. But as it turns out, horses are a wonderful first touch with agriculture. Putting a child on a horse's back is something that there's just really no experience to match it. So Farm Day at WonderTree has turned into, for the most part, for a lot of kids, and certainly for me, horse rides on Sherman. I walk all day on Saturdays now, leading this horse or one of our other ones up and down the pasture with kids on their back, getting to know the kids, getting to know their parents who usually walk along beside, and people just fall in love with. I'm convinced that for a lot of kids, it's, you walk in the barn, you grab a barn cat and you enjoy holding the barn cat, and then you ride Sherman, and then you go pet the pigs, and then you go pet the baby chicks, and by the end of the whole thing, it's mom, oh mom, 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 when are we going back to WonderTree? And my prayer is that this moves forward into the future, and people, there are young people who want to be involved in agriculture somehow, as because of their experience here at WonderTree or some other farm. We want to be a place that perpetuates a love for nature and a desire to use agriculture to steward it well. These are the first cattle that we ever got. And you can see in this picture, if you can see me over there, just how uneasy I was. I grew up with cattle, but I hadn't had them in a long time. And so this was the very first day a guy pulled up and unloaded them out of a trailer. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what breed I wanted. I knew I wanted them to be grass-fed because all these people who were buying our local eggs and chicken wanted grass-fed beef. Somewhere, this is that exact same herd, and somewhere within the first couple of years, you can see they're bigger now. This is the kind of stand of grass we had once we put cattle on our pastures. So we were putting chickens out there, light footprint. Once we started to carpet down the grass pretty well, we brought these guys in with their cloven hooves. Cattle build organic matter and sequester carbon unlike any animal that we have in America, I would say. That is how all of the Great Plains were built, by a cow-like animal called a buffalo, being moved across it by predators and giant mobs, grazing, dropping 50 pounds of poop every day out of their rear end, and then being moved along by wolves and stuff like that. And all it did was build organic matter. It cooled the environment over the tops of those places. You would have found the actual temperature over the Great Plains to be very different in those days than it is today. I believe that you could make a case probably that on substantial pastured operations, that time would find cooler temperatures, but not by significant amounts, but certainly by some degree, over grassy areas where cattle are grazing. Cattle have been much vilified. The management of cattle in industrial capacity on feedlots should be vilified. It is a reductionistic, mechanistic way of raising that animal. It defrauds it. It removes it from its native habitat. However, the picture on your screen, and I again say this humbly, I am not some kind of an expert. I'm just a guy who stumbled into some good information and had the will. I will say that I had the will to go try it. The environment there you see on your screen is where cattle thrive. They love it, and they cause more grass to grow than was growing before them. They sequester carbon. Their hooves stir the microbial community underneath them, and they are good for the environment. And I'm willing to stand on that. I know that to be true. It's true biologically. It may not be true politically, but I'm not, I don't say this as a way of starting a fight. I'm not really concerned about the politics of our age as it concerns the environment and someone in Washington telling me if cattle are good for the environment or not. I don't believe that that's true, to say that they are not. I've seen it done too many ways, too well. I've seen land healed. I've seen erosion stopped. And I've seen a lot of healthy food for humans produced to believe that. This is a good environment for cattle, and we love raising them, and we stand on that as principle. This is one of those guys on the first day that he was, before he went, on the last day before he went to processing. He was not impressive at all. However, his chuck roast, and I'm again, some people chuckle when I show pictures like this. I'm really not trying, or they get offended. I'm not trying to offend anyone or make anyone laugh. He was beautiful. His meat was great, and he wasn't really that impressive. He was raised on weeds and grass and stuff like that out on our farm. But when he was processed and brought back, we sold out of him in just a couple of Saturdays. And I started to realize that, we live in an informed community where people care. They understand more than you think they understand. They want to eat something that's raised locally. They want to know the person who raised it. And they believe that if an animal is healthy and is fed healthy things, it will in turn produce healthy food. And so Big Red was his name. This is just going back real fast. This is us with Gus and Dolly, are the two great white Pyrenees when they were puppies, right there in the foreground. This is us. We were out there like a bunch of Adam and Eves among the animals, just kind of in those early days, figuring it out. We didn't know much, but we knew that we loved this and we loved these animals. My dad, I just put this in here because I grew up on a big cattle ranch, and my dad said this every single time that we worked cattle. He apologized for his profanity-laced tirades, and it just made me laugh. We put this up in the video montage at his funeral because every time we got in the truck after working cattle, he would say, "Son, I'm sorry for what I said when we were working cattle." And it was just, it was special. There's a lot to that. I could expand on why it's so frustrating to work cattle and why it's not frustrating for me to work cattle. But we're going to run out of time, and I want you guys to be able to ask your questions if you have any. As it turns out, cattle do give birth if you breed them. These are just, I'm going to skate through this quickly. These are this is just some eye candy. I love these pictures. There's some of the calves that have been born on WonderTree. They're so sweet. I'll sit in the grass and just sit there with them until the mom comes and runs me off. That's an idea of getting into the genetics of grass-fed animals. We started to move into better animals, deeper bodied, going back and getting heritage breeds, things that have not been crossed with a bunch of, things that are not modified genetically, old genetics. They're more expensive, but they make much better meat. They're lighter footprint because they don't weigh as much on the ground. They're really, really good for the biology of a farm. This gives you another idea. Just as our genetics continued to improve, our animals started to improve, our grass improved, and as our grass improved, the animals improved, and the cycle goes on. This was just last week. These are some Murray Grey Angus cross cattle that I trailered in. I opened this gate, I backed away, and they promptly sprinted out onto the acreage and began enjoying their life. This is going to give you an idea of what happens in just about 3 years after we took this farm that had been in corn and beans and annual hay crops and put it in perennials. There's still a significant amount of weeds in it, but that is really an undoctored picture of a big pasture on our farm that has it's come alive. And we have not even put chickens on this. This is just from rotational grazing of herbivores, moving cattle around on it. It gives you an idea of kind of how we have grown as farmers. We started out with these skinny little cows we didn't know anything about, putting them out on weeds and stuff like that, and then turning into grass eating, carbon sequestering, beautiful, beautiful animals. This is a cow that we tried to send to processing one time, and she promptly let us know she did not want to go to processing. And we're really glad that we did not send her to processing, because not long after, she had this guy on the ground, and she is still with our herd, and she's still giving birth to calves. Gives you an idea. We like mobile infrastructure. We feed our cattle and things like this. This is them just this winter. I took this a few weeks ago. We move our hay feeder around in the field. This gives you an idea of the kinds of environments that we put them in. We rotationally graze them, move them around. We never let them eat that down until you can see the ground. We let them eat it just until they've taken the tops off the grass, and then it's time to move them on and let that big solar receptor, which is the blade of grass, take sunlight and convert it back into biomass. This is a cow named Mr. Love that my daughter and my wife raised with our kids, really. I kind of gave it to them and let them go with it. He continued growing, and he's precious. He was a really, really good, turned into a big, nice steer. That's Dolly. These are just the cast, what I call the cast of characters here at WonderTree. That's Dolly, who takes care of. She's a really, really sweet livestock guardian. That's Gus, her brother. That is so that you guys know that I do indeed love my animals. That's a self-gratifying picture. I apologize. That's Dolly. I love that dog. This is our newest Great Pyrenees. His name is Walt. Walt is learning. He's hanging out with Gus there out in one of our new barns. That's him asleep by the potbelly stove in the WonderTree market after a long sale day where he was handled and petted and loved on by a lot of children. That's Bubba. He is our Australian Shepherd. That's Bubba with Arnie on the left, and then that is a dog that we fostered for a little while and now has his forever home on the right. Cats, we love them. They do great work. We believe barn cats are a huge part of any farm, not just because they're cute and get handled, but because they take care of mice. We let our cats have kittens. We believe this is natural. We believe living things reproduce. These cats give birth to their kittens. The kittens stay on our farm for their life, and they keep the place clear of varmints and critters that neither I nor our customers want around. That's my daughter Lydia with Sunny. Sunny gives a lot of horse rides too at WonderTree. That is Half Pint. She's a goat who has given birth to a lot of beautiful goats here. Our goats are not for any other purpose than to clear the fence lines, and they do a great job. They have a purpose, a great purpose here. That's Sherman. Daisy, who gave birth to Dusty, who is another one of our donkeys. That is Sugar. Sugar's famous here, cute little billy goat. This is what it looks like now in our egg boxes when you go out after a day of laying. This is an egg mobile that I built. We have two of these. I built it mainly from scrap wood, stuff that I could buy at Home Depot out of the 70% off pile. And I built it on a hay wagon chassis that I was able to forage off of an old farm. And then I wrapped it in, I put a good roof on it, but then I wrapped it in this old fence wood from a fence that I tore down. And that's what it looks like now. And we put about, there's probably 300 or 400 hens that make this one home. Believe it or not, it's got a lot of egg boxes now. We put more egg boxes on it. It's got a significant, it's 9 by 20, so it's pretty big. That's Lydia out. That's kind of what the environment around it looked like back then. Now there's significantly more chickens. That is way off in the distance. You can see that's where the kind of environment where we put our chickens to raise their eggs. Again, that was a corn and bean field. Still a lot of weeds, but still a lot of green coming up in that, a lot of good grass coming up in that. And still being transformed from corn and beans, from glyphosate-soaked, scorched earth clay to a pasture, to something that's cool and beautiful. That's me in front of our second eggmobile that we built out of yet even more crap that we had laying around. And there's the two of them together with, it's a fairly updated picture of our operation for egg laying. It's egg collection day with Bo on the right, Lydia on the left. You can see all the eggs down there on the crate and one of the chickens trying to get back to the eggs. This is how we winter our laying hens. We bring them in to a real open air kind of environment. It's a little warmer in here. We blocked the wind from them. This was before this structure was completed, but we did have them in there. They have non-GMO feed. We grind really healthy hay into their feed to bring them to pasture. We put them on deep bedding wood chips. They find a lot of their feed from the microorganisms in those wood chips. And then again, this is all very cyclical. All of those wood chips on the ground get composted, and they turn into some of the best compost, some of the best fertilizer that you can put on your pastures. So this is not a passive sort of thing we're doing through the winter. We are building something here that we can use. That's egg washing day. This happens just about every other day. That is our brooder now for broilers. That's 10 minutes later in the brooder for broilers. We raise about 500 at a time. And after seeing several of our broilers fly off in the clutches of hawks and bald eagles, we decided there has to be a better way to raise broiler chickens. For those of you who have ever done this, you know what I'm saying. They just have no ability to defend themselves. So this is the best idea that we have ever figured out for raising broilers, and it just works on our farm. It may not work on yours if you're a farmer, or you may think this is good or bad. It's just a greenhouse with roll-up sides, and the roll-up sides underneath it have wire mesh. They have tons of fresh air. There's a chain attached to the end, both ends of this. We move it with a tractor every single day, the entire length of itself. So they get the entire 20 by 30 structure moves 600 square feet every day to fresh pasture. It's also a jungle gym for my kids. This is moving day when we take them from the brooder and we move them into that structure you can see there in the back. That's day one for a lot of the small ones. That is an industrial chicken facility, and this is always compelling to me because I just can't believe they do this. That's I don't know, a couple of million birds or something in that place. I can't imagine what a terrible environment that is. I want to go back and just show you that's what it looks like in ours. And again, I'm not a self-righteous green farmer, but I tend to, if I'm going to eat chicken, I want to eat it from a natural environment. There's that again. This is them at about the same age as those birds in the industrial environment. Keep in mind, this moves every single day. So they do have space, less space at the very end, but again, moving every day. We always have a good stand of grass for them, fresh food, fresh water. They eat bugs and worms and grubs, microorganisms. That's at feeding time there at the toward the 8 to 9 week mark. This is when we pack them up and take them to processing. They are in those cages just for a few hours on their way to processing. Here we are as a family on harvest day. This is about pork. Pork is not a white meat, it's a red meat. Pork is only white if you raise it on a concrete floor and give it bleached out corn. People routinely think our pork shoulder roasts are chuck roasts, like beef chuck roasts. So that is what our pork looks like. It is red. And again, we're not experts. We just put things where we think they probably should be. And that's environments like this. And I'm going to move quickly through this. We put our pigs on pasture. We raise heritage breed pigs. Anywhere we can find a patch that is overgrown, something, we don't put them out on pasture in the sense of cattle pasture. We do put them in places that cattle won't necessarily graze. This is a tree line that we just basically move them down. It gives them plenty of shade. They're very happy pigs. That's just another angle, kind of from a similar spot. This is how we load them. We load them onto a hydraulic trailer. We also, moving forward from pigs, we raise one big flock of turkeys a year. That's because that's just all I can take of turkeys. I like them, but only in small doses. That is a trampoline. We were talking about the value of thrift. That's a trampoline top that we saved and made a turkey shelter out of, and we used it this year. That is processing day. That's harvest day for my young son Bo and me for turkeys. They load them in the trailer and take them. Those are my kids. This is giving you an idea of just the kind of experiences my children have had since we did move them out here purely for them to begin with. They've been able to help me build a barn. I built this barn. This is called the economy barn. We built it out of telephone poles that were free. And I bought a bunch of trusses off of Facebook Marketplace for $50 a piece. We started to wrap it in wood, and the wood, a lot of it came off of what, if you remember from the beginning, the WonderTree. Once it died, we milled a lot of wood off of it. So this is the WonderTree barn. This is our second barn. And this is really the one that's not the public venue. This is the one where we can actually do farm work. And it's really gratifying to go take down that big tree after it died and make it a part of the fiber of our operation by building this structure from it. And that's what she looks like about right now. Community, that's Randy Walker. He's a guy, he and I are on different sides of the aisle as far as agriculture goes, but what we agree on, and we help each other out on our farms. And here he is, he's tilling our garden for us. This is a kid named Carter who lives in a neighborhood over here on the west side of Carmel. Carter collects egg cartons from us, like a lot of people, egg cartons and grocery sacks. And Carter does an amazing job. He goes door to door. He collects them from his neighbors, and he brings them to the farm. And if you buy eggs from WonderTree, or if you have bags that are, with your meat in it when you leave, Carter, there's a very good chance that Carter collected those items. We don't want to go buy those and have more composite or styrofoam or plastic or any of that produced if we don't have to. There's plenty of it around here. So it's been a very, very long time since we've had to buy any receptacles for eggs or for shopping bags or anything like that, thanks to people like Carter. There are some, there's a story behind this, but there are some little piglets that were born here at the farm. That's Lydia feeding her horses. That is the kind of fun we have here. That's Bo being chased by his older brother, who learned how to rope when we moved to the farm. We rope nothing except for one another, basically, but they have a lot of fun doing it. I love the look on Bo's face. That is another, this is Daisy with, my daughter put a saddle on her and a helmet, and I don't know, I thought it was a cute picture. I thought this is the kind of fun we have in lieu of video, instead of video games and all kinds of crazy stuff that they could be doing, they're out dressing up donkeys. It's a blast. That is Elvis, King of Rock. That was his name. We love this picture because he would kneel on this rock, and his name was Elvis, so he was the King of Rock. That's Jen with Dusty, her daughter Daisy, and Gus, our Great Pyrenees. She has come a long way from the cul-de-sac in Carmel that she was born and raised on. She really has been a champ buying into this vision and being a part of what we're doing here. She's a wonderful wife and an incredible mother. The things you see on a farm. And that, if you can remember the very first picture of me saying everything's A-okay here at the Super Bowl, that is one of our chickens. Jen thought this would be a funny picture, wearing my Super Bowl ring. So that's about the only good use we've found for that Super Bowl ring since we won it. Certainly the best use, to let this girl put it on and show off her nails with the diamonds. In this last picture, that's Sherman in front of the WonderTree before it was taken down. You can see it had died at this point, and I just thought this was a great picture. One of the first animals to be here, one of the ones that has been such a part of the culture of our farm, there in front of the big fixture, the 340-year-old white oak, the day before we took it down and wrapped our barn in it. I know that there are a million things that I could have touched on today, and I'd like to, if we have time. I haven't looked at the clock for pictures. I'm trying to race through this, but that's just kind of a broad overview of WonderTree and my family and what we're doing out here. Again, we really are. We've tried to be humble farmers. We've tried to learn from a lot of other people, and we are open to you coming to our farm. You're welcome to come. Now we are not just open Saturdays 10 to 1. We are open Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. The Tuesday and Friday are 10 to 1. The Thursday is a 3 to 6, so we get the drive time folks. They're well attended in the winter, or when we have terrible, terrible weather, we turn it into a drive-through so people aren't parking in the mud. Mostly food buyers come on those days, but all kinds of people come all the time when we're open. You can go online and check out, again, WonderTreeFarm.com, or you can just Google us to see some information about us. That's WonderTree at a glance. I'm Hunter Smith, and thank you for listening today.
Hunter, thank you so much. That was amazing. It's so inspiring to see those photos, and thank you for sharing them with us. And I can tell from the comments, a lot of people agree. It's nice to see a farm that is what we all imagine when we picture a farm, which is so rare anymore. So everybody else, feel free to turn your videos on if you'd like, or even unmute yourself. I know there's quite a lot of us still, but we will go through the questions that we have so far in chat. But that way, if anybody wants to, pipe in and ask questions just in person to Hunter, I know he prefers that anyway. I was worried a little bit about him having to speak to a crowd of blank screens. So I'm sure that was not easy to do, but we have a lot of people on, and I think hopefully everybody enjoyed it as much as I do. Obviously, I know we're a little bit over time, or it depends on what time you saw that we were going to end, but please feel free to, if you need to hang up, we understand, but we're going to go on as long as Hunter's okay with it, and
yes,
answer questions and have a conversation if we can. So I will just start off with one of the first questions that came in. Were visitors to WonderTree. Are most of them from Indianapolis, or do you have any idea where?
Yes. I would say most of them are from central Indiana. We have some people who do drive from out of state to buy our food. We don't ship, but we welcome people from all over the place. I think this is neat. I'll share this little factoid, and I need you all to trust me and hear me in the right spirit. I really am not trying to make a braggadocious statement here using statistics or anything, but from what we understand, we have about 4,000 customers, like real customers, that buy our food that live within about 5 to 7 miles of us. And that's really food buyers. It's quite a few more if you talk about people who come to farm day to feed animals and stuff like that. And I say that so that you all understand just how excited the world is about local agriculture. And that's not just right here where we are. People are catching on to this. People want to buy food from around them. And I don't ship to people because if somebody is 20 miles from here, I want them to either come to the farm, or I want them to find a farmer that lives near them and support that person, because I do believe the future of agriculture is going to be local. It's a more fibrous food system that is supported by the people around the farm and provides food to, that farm provides food to the people who live directly near it. I just think that works better. I think that a better food system, would be hubs like WonderTree, supporting several thousand families around them. And I don't want to let everybody else off the hook, because this is important. I think those people in neighborhoods, I think that they need to be growing gardens. I think they need to be having laying hens. I think that really tightens up everything. We're not, that way, if you want pork and 10 people at a pork facility in Logansport get COVID, they don't have to euthanize 1 million hogs and there's no pork at the grocery store. It would be a much more fibrous system if there were networks of local farms that were being supported by people around them who were also growing smaller staples of their own food. I don't know that I answered the question perfectly, but I expanded a little bit, but I think that gives you an idea of my thoughts on that. Yep.
No, definitely. Somebody asked, how many chickens do you have?
Well, right now in the winter, we only have 600 laying hens, and we have a couple more hundred coming at the end of this month. And then once we get we'll start raising our broilers. So that answer is, I'm rarely able to answer that question because it's always changing. But throughout the year, it can be as many as 4,000 or 5,000 at a time with the pastured operations.
Very nice. Are you familiar with a nonprofit called Kiss the Ground? And I know that's an open-ended question, but
I am, and I think that what they're doing is wonderful. I do not want to speak to it too much because I know I'm supposed to watch a documentary or something. There are a lot of things that there's so much information out there, and I try to stay up with it as much as possible. But the reality is, doing this takes so much of my time. I don't have a lot of time to do that. But it's on my list of things that I need to find an evening to watch. Yes, and understand about the movement.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. And yeah, for those of you who haven't heard of it, be worth checking out. What is the size of your farm?
So this is probably one of the most encouraging things. It started off as 22 acres, and then we leased another 100 acres, and that's what we have. It's all in livestock, and that's not huge, but it turns out if you rotationally graze and if you steward things in small quantities, manageable stocking rates that are mobile can feed a lot of animals. It really operates. The 100-acre tract really operates like 300 acres. I could put a lot more animals on it. I just don't have I couldn't sell all of that right now. And so we're trying to, grow into that and steward that well. But yeah, right now we're about 125 acres of accessible land.
Very nice. Very nice. Aaron asked, are there animals that you've tried, but for whatever reason don't raise anymore?
Yes, we tried lamb. There was a big demand for lamb early on. And I think it was the second or third time that the entire flock ended up on the other side of 421, which is the road in front of us, that I decided that there was probably a safer home for them. And that's a management issue. That's my fault. It was just one of those things where I was like, these are kind of uncontainable. They just kind of move where they want to go, and ignore my electric fence. So that's one that we did try, and I failed miserably at it. But yeah, I would say that's about it. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, the 421, that could be a problem.
Yeah, big problem.
Rick Bain wanted to know if he says, thanks, Hunter. Are you able to operate in the black?
We are. You say his name is Rick?
Mm-hmm.
Rick, I appreciate the question. And it is the question of our age. And that sounds like really ominous, but it really kind of is. If small farmers cannot make a serviceable living for their family, if they cannot live off of what they're doing, then I'm just up here. I'm just an ex-football player playing cowboy in the suburbs. And people think, oh, isn't that great what they're doing? And that's not at all what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to either prove or disprove a concept. And we do operate in the black. However, here's what I always say to people who say they want to get into this. At first, they kind of are, people have a pie in the sky idea that every day is going to be green grass and clucking chickens and, Hobby Lobby signs that say farm, sweet farm and, stuff like that. And I just always try to get into the nuts and bolts of like winter is really hard. Mortality is a real thing. Everything does not live like you want it to live and stay healthy like you want it to stay healthy. That's part of the learning curve. And if you are going to be a farmer, and I hope this doesn't scare too many people off, but if you want to farm, you're going to have to learn self-denial on a number of levels, in the sense that, my family, just to be completely honest with you, we don't really vacation. If we do, it's very short, or it involves going to see family. We don't buy. My wife's Suburban has 272,000 miles on it, and we bought it with 94,000 miles on it, and we just keep making small repairs to it because we don't see how buying a new family car is conducive to how our farm operates. I drive a used truck. We buy all used equipment. If I always tell people, like, don't think that you're going to move out on a piece of property, build a 4,500 square foot house, have a mortgage, live like some kind of a fairly luxurious lifestyle and do this. Part of the luxury of doing it, is the work, is the impact it has on your family, the impact it has on your own soul, the humbling way that it transforms people into something very different. I'm a very different person in that first picture at the Super Bowl. That person really thought he was he was dogmatic about a number of things. He thought he knew things he didn't know anything about. And I can point to just living a life in contact with creation and nature through agriculture that it's had a very transforming effect on me. So that all sounds very pie in the sky. The answer to your question is we are in the black, however, not by much. And it all depends on how much of a simple lifestyle you want to live as to whether you can enter into this and stay in the black. So I encourage people, do it, try it, learn, commit to it. But know that you're trading off a lot of things that the world calls great for a lot of things that, in my opinion, are actually great. That's my answer.
That's a great answer. Again, anyone, feel free to come off of or turn your video on if you would like to, so we can have a conversation. I'm going to read a comment quickly and then ask a question in the chat, and then I'm going to switch over to Ashley. She's had her hand up for a little while now. But the first comment is from Forest School Teacher Institute. Thank you for the transformative story of the land, of the people, and of the animals. I so wish more young people could find the land and the startup dollars to dream such dreams as these. Access is such an issue. And I know we've had conversations about that in the past, and that is obviously. I'll read Sarah's real quick. Have you found other farmers becoming more interested in regenerative farming in Indiana?
Yes, I think people are interested in it in Indiana. We are so corn and bean heavy here that, and those are, just truthfully, those are government supported commodities. They just are. It's hard to talk people out of it. You have to find people who are really interested in the principle of it all. Who are thinking big and thinking in the future and thinking about how their children and their children's children are going to eat and what kind of condition the land and the environment are going to be in those days. And it's hard to find people. We don't like to think that way. We like to kind of think hey, that's their problem. This is my life now. And having children, I've really changed my perspective on that. I really, really want to see this place healthy. I want to see people long after I'm dead. I want to see people, again, enjoying nature through agriculture. And to speak to the comment, I appreciate that, and they're right. And I never for a second would stand here and try to tell you that I did not have capital to get started. Having said that, there were very few things that my wife and I just went out and spent massive quantities of money, because part of the calling, and we talked about this earlier, it being a calling, part of the calling is to prove or disprove it. It does nobody any good if a professional football goes and, again, plays cowboy in the suburbs and tells you, hey, you can do it like I did it. Just play 12 years in the NFL. So, that's not helpful to the world. I have some friends that have a lot of money, huge amounts of money. And they have come to me after coming to the farm and asked if they could essentially subsidize this, essentially invest in it and be an angel of sorts. They're like, hey, small ag is so hot. Why don't we go buy you 400 or 500 acres and you can do it on there? And that's really, really like, wow, that is really like enticing until you start thinking, well, what does that say, though, for kids that I'm trying to get interested in farming? All you have to do is have rich friends that can come and, take your hobby and blow it up into something huge that's unattainable. That's not where our heart is. Our heart is in thrift. Our heart is in small. Our heart is in community. Our heart is in what is sustainable and something that we can pass along. That's actually how we are approaching this.
Got it. Ashley, thank you so much for being patient. Do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Now I can't find unmute. I had to move because my children are very loud, so I apologize if they bust in here. But
you're good.
Thank you so much for this. I am curious. Well, I have two questions. One, if you take volunteers, someone like me, I did not grow up on a farm, but I'm very theoretically interested,
Mhm.
but would love to kind of like get my hands in that and have my children surrounded by that. And so I was wondering if you have like volunteer days. That's the first question. And then the second question is, how did you overcome the issue of the glyphosate in your ground, you plant your grass and stuff as you got started with your farming? Because that can seem very scary when you're purchasing land and you want to, turn it over, but it seems that you've done a wonderful job with that. So if you can just kind of speak to those things.
Ashley,
thank you.
First of all, thank you for your question and for your patience. And I do understand the deal with the kids. I've been down here praying the whole time. My kids are on spring break, and I've been praying that they don't come tumbling down the stairs. And on the first one, yes, we have people who have volunteered. I'll be honest with you. There's a little bit of a thing there where people offer to volunteer in theory, but then when you take them up on it, and it's not, life is just busy. A lot of times it's like, hey, well, we can do this day if you want to come out and help with this. And it just ends up kind of going by the wayside. It's one of those things that they end up, the concept of volunteering is good, but the reality of it kind of never plays out. Having said that, we do have some people, and we have a wonderful situation now. We have a crew of volunteers who are planting a WonderTree garden, and it's a big garden, and this is their first year, and they are letting volunteers come help them. So there's a gal named Becky who's heading that up. Her email is becky@wondertreefarm.com. And if any of you are interested in helping volunteer, that's a really good, it's, on some parts of the farm, I'm leery of taking kids that I don't know along because, things trample people and stuff like that. But the garden, the laying hens, things like that, that's a place where people can really help out. So if anyone wants to follow up with Becky @wondertreefarm.com, she does a great job of coordinating that stuff. And she's one of these gals that can really work. And if she's not careful, she'll do it all herself. And so I'm more than happy to put her email out there so that because I don't want her to break in half, out there by herself. To your next question, it's the right question as it pertains to soil and what's in it. And I would just say that over time, soil has a way of sanitizing itself first of all, with water, but also the more you plant in it, the more that those things are kind of absorbed and evaporated and absorbed. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say 5 years you can rid your farm of glyphosate, or that we have ridded our farm of glyphosate. I will tell you right now, categorically, we have never had a single pesticide, herbicide, dewormer. We don't use anything, but these places where we farm were covered in it before. And so it has been years. It's been more than enough years for the organic standards of the USDA to kick in and call us organic. But, we're also here in the middle of the Midwest where, water evaporates off the ground into the cloud, and the cloud blows over another piece of property, and then the cloud rains. And I think it's one of those things where it's kind of the matrix that we're all living in. So it's bad. You wish it wasn't there, but the best thing you can just do is stop. And we're going to have people who are just willing to go get on properties and go for it. And, over the long haul, transform those places into places that are void of chemicals and void of all of those inputs. I appreciate the question. It's not a great answer, but it's kind of what we've done. We just kind of got here and stopped doing that.
It makes sense because you do have to kind of start somewhere, and it's something that maybe won't go away in terms of its existence, but we can, as you're doing, regenerate.
That's right.
And,
So Wendell Berry is my favorite author, and Wendell Berry says it was, we did not get here with a bunch of big, bad decisions. We got here with a bunch of little bad decisions. Tons of micro decisions that were bad. So it stands to reason we will get out of this with a lot of small good decisions. If you run into some massive legislation that you think is going to heal the land, I can almost assure you that that's not going to heal the land. It will be people like us doing little things on little places over time. How are you, sir? I can see the hand up.
Yeah, this is our HEC's executive director, Sam Carpenter, who has his hand up. So, Sam, do you have a question?
Sure. Hi, thank you. And Hunter, thanks for doing this with Hoosier Environmental Council today. And thanks, Jenny, for coordinating and organizing today. Yeah, I have a question in terms of supporting, like, are there supports that, small local farmers need that aren't out there? I'm thinking, how can HEC or others, support this type of agriculture and food source?
No, it's a good question, and I don't want to kind of talk out of my rear end, and come up with something. But I'll tell you this: there has to be, in this generation, a population of people who are old, who are maybe farmers, or who are just landholders, wealthy landholders, things like that. I don't know what this looks like, but I'll just say this, because I've thought about this quite a bit. We are not going to, if you're a 25-year-old guy and or a 25-year-old lady, and you're married and you have a couple of kids and you want to be a farmer, you're not just going to walk out here and buy 100 acres at $12 or $15 and $1,000 an acre and be able to do it. We're going to have some kind of, and I don't want to call it charitable, but there's going to have to be some kind of a benevolent jumpstart. And I think it comes from, I've thought about this a lot. If there is a way to communicate with landholders who are not just interested in flipping their properties and making millions of dollars selling them to the next developer, if there's a way that we could network with them and communicate with them, people like the ones that I actually leased one of my farms from, and get them on board and allow them, and get them to allow, maybe a young farming couple or family or something to come and live at their place meagerly and start regenerating that farm. That's I'm not sure what that looks like. You guys think about this stuff. I don't know how you get that done, but if there was a way, networking wise, I'm not sure how it worked, but to get the word out. I think there are a lot of people out there. I've had some approach me. You have some people who are in their 70s and 80s and they're like, I've got 100 acres and we've done nothing with it, and I don't want my kids to have it because they're just going to sell it. I would really like to see it turned into a farm. Those people are out there. So if that is something that can be done, if there's a way that communication, between the council and general population of people, you'd be surprised how many people are out there who would be interested in, I don't want to call it a donation, but maybe some kind of a partnership between landholders and producers. That's the top of my mind.
I love that. That gives me chills. Yeah, there's something we can run with, Sam.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's been a fantastic idea. I love it. All right, we'll skip back to some of the text questions quickly. Sorry, I think I lost my spot here. I love Eric. Eric, if you're still on, hopefully Eric Stickdorn, who is a friend of HEC. Do you have a favorite brand of farm boots that don't crack at the toe joint in the first 6 months?
You know what? We have purchased all of the, like muck boots and stuff like that. We've spent, I always get sticker shock when I buy mud boots, but at the same time, you have to have good warm boots in the winter. There is no bad weather. There's just bad clothing. And if you lose your toes and you lose your fingers, you can't work outside. That's all there is to it. So the best thing I've found is a good pair of muck boots in the winter with one of those like hand warmers stuffed into the toe of it to stay warm. And muck boots are good. But the reality is, when you deal with the types of living compost that we operate in, if you don't, hose them off all the time, you're probably going to have to buy a new pair every 2 years because they will break down. Turns out nature wins in that battle. Nature will take your boots down in a hurry.
Very true. How many of your animals have you raised from birth?
So that's a really good question. And for farmers out there, I think this is a point to note. There's only so much you can do. You only have so many hands. You only have so many hours in the day. So I would say that we raise about 1/4 of our cattle from breeding stock in terms of our feeder calves. The rest of them we source from other people who raise in similar environments, grass-fed cattle. Then pigs, we were told early on, I was told by a friend of mine who's a regenerative farmer, find another regenerative farmer who raises more pigs than he wants to raise, that he can raise, and start buying off him and support him. Because if you try to raise pastured pigs and farrow pastured pigs, you're going to fail somewhere. You're going to lose in that proposition. So we do some of our cattle, none of our pigs, and then I have no idea how we would be able to do birds at the scale that we do out from hatching. We don't do that. We found that there are good resources out there. I know that these seem like industrial resources, but we buy all of our birds from small operations with tiny little hatcheries with people who have been doing it for 100 years in small places in Ohio mainly. We don't have any hatcheries in Indiana. I don't understand that, but there's not a single hatchery here that we can support locally. So the answer to that question, I will tell you, I am not much of a breeder. I like to breed cattle, and we do some of that. But everything else, we have really, really trusted. There's a network of trusted people. If anyone wants to get into this, you can find people out there who you can support. And once they have your support, they can then begin to raise more. And you're not buying from a factory operation. You're not buying commercial genetics necessarily. You're buying old genetics. That's what we do.
Excellent. I'm just looking through. Actually, I'm going to ask one question, and then maybe Rick, if you don't mind coming off of mute, unless you, I know you have some excellent questions in there. I'm happy to read them, but you also could just ask them if you'd like this way. But let me ask real quick. Where was that? Sorry. From Kathy Edwards. Hello, I'm part of Franklin Community High School FFA supporter. Can we get in contact with you to come talk with our kids? And we're trying to expand and build our farm at the school, she says. So.
You sure can. And I have no problem with this. My email address, the one that goes to this computer I'm looking at right now, is hunter@WonderTreeFarm.com. Hunter@WonderTreeFarm.com. You can email me right there. I want to be a help as much as I can be to anybody who wants. And I enjoy talking to kids. I do.
Yes, you're good at that. Rick, do you mind? Do you want to go ahead and ask some of the questions, or I don't know if you remember all of them?
Well, I did. One, I just wondered how you been able to benefit from the technical services like Purdue Extension and the soil water conservation. Have they been of aid to you?
I appreciate the question. They have not.
Huh.
And that's not, that is not their fault. That is just been, we have just worked the way we've worked. We've just come out here and looked at this place, walked on it, surveyed it, got kind of what are the best practices that we can do out here. And what we've done it that way. I believe that those are good resources. I do. I don't mean that condescendingly. I really do. But we have not had anything to do with that.
How have you learned the best practices?
Within the regenerative space, there is just a camp out there of people that know what they're talking about. And they are on the internet. I would say Joel Salatin, the guy I spoke about earlier, who's a mentor of mine, is a wonderful place to start. He has incredible videos where he will just take you and show you everything he does and why he does it. His books are fantastic. So he was where I started, and as a mentor, he's been huge for me. He is a guy who has done all of this from the ground up. They transformed a huge swath of the Shenandoah Valley from gullies into something that looks like Eden now. And he shows you how they did it. So Joel Salatin is his name. That's Salatin. Greg Judy is an amazing person. He's much more of a country, just an old country fella, but he is in Missouri, and he's a grazer. He's a grass-fed grazer. And I would recommend you look up Greg Judy, just from the standpoint of how you turning landscapes back green again using herbivores and cloven hoof animals. So if you go out there and just in the regenerative space, there's a guy named Gabe Brown. I recommend listening to Gabe Brown. He's a great resource. There are just kind of a few fathers of the movement, these guys who are outside of those official channels, from land-grant universities and things like that, guys who are, I don't want to say they're rogue farmers, they're just out there kind of independently regenerating places. And if there is anything good about the internet, it's the ability to do Zoom calls like this and to hear guys like that really get, just put wisdom out there. I have loved that. That's been a great way for me to learn. And then beyond that, as a startup, nothing will teach you, nothing teaches you like doing it. There are a lot of people who want to learn the prevailing personality around me in this space is, I want to learn everything I can so I don't fail. And I'm just like, well, then you're never going to do it. At a certain point, you just have to, go order 5 or 10 chickens and see if you can keep them alive and get them to lay eggs and then learn from that. I always tell people that I don't want you to be presumptuous, but don't assume that there is some gigantic industry of experts out there that we all need to lean on. Go and try and see what happens.
Well, I would think that a lot of those experts would use you as a model.
Well,
you talk to the soil and water conservation districts here, all those conservation practices that they recommend, you got them in your pocket.
Well, I really appreciate that. And I do want to tell you that now that I think about it, we did have the USDA Conservation Office, some folks from that come out just because they wanted to see what we were doing. And we showed them, and that was really a special time. Because at that point, I didn't know if I was doing things right or not. And they confirmed that I was, and that was a great relief to me. So thank you for your question.
And actually, I don't think I want to ask this just because, Rick, this was interesting to me too. You had said regenerative livestock farming community and their practices need to gain a foothold within the grain grower community. So with that in mind, do you know of a grain grower community that have regenerative practices? Did you guys discuss that? I didn't think. Okay.
It's a great question. Thank you for asking that question. We need it. If there is one reason why I would want to expand acreage to be a multiple hundreds of acres sort of operation, it would be because I believe what we have done this area we live in right now used to be 3 or 4 feet deep with topsoil. And now you drive out across the country and find one of these old cemeteries and notice that every single old cemetery appears to be on a hill. That is because that ground has not eroded since those people were buried there, when they started being buried there 200 years ago. And you can see how high the ground used to be. But it has eroded. The only way to gain that back is to farm regeneratively. And that, I'm not saying we have all the answers in this quote movement, because I really don't believe in movements, but putting animals back on property, planting cover crops through the winter. Can you imagine? Drive around in Indiana right now and tell me how many cover crops you see on these farm fields. They have been just sitting underneath the wind and the rain, running off into the gullies, disappearing, the water running. You see these huge machines that plant these tiles everywhere. That's because there's not enough humus in the ground to absorb the water, so that all these places flood. So the reason I would want to have a much larger farm would be plant cover crops, graze cover crops, drill. I wouldn't mind raising corn, like corn and other protein sources, besides maybe soybeans, maybe other things, but drilling them non-GMO into cover crops. That, as far as I'm concerned, keeping the ground covered is everything in terms of regenerating land, sequestering carbon. I don't know. It's not going to get any better. People are living as though this is just going to continue. Like the ground is just a venue for these seeds to grow, and we don't need to worry about rebuilding topsoil. But that is a disaster that is happening, but is also waiting to happen on a much greater scale in the future.
Yes. Let's see. I just had it, and I apologize. I started listening closer to you. I lost my spot. If anybody, by the way, if I somehow skipped anyone's questions, please feel free to either retype it or come off mute and ask it. I do see. Have you examined the works of a fellow from Austria named Sepp Holzer? He has done work with regenerative grains, orchards, aquaculture on his farm called Steve, I'm not even going to try and butcher that. Kramatterhof.
I haven't, but can you say that name again?
Sure. Sepp, S-E-P-P, Holzer, Holzer.
And who asked that question?
That was from Steve Nodley, Nodley.
Okay, Steve, I will check out. I love new resources. Thank you. I wrote down that name, and I'll check out Sepp. Thank you.
And Kristen, actually, I did kind of miss at least a comment question. It's heartbreaking to see such fertile ground in Indiana flipped into concrete neighborhoods. I wish there was a network to link farms to people like you. Suggest maybe via FFA ? So I guess it's kind of a question.
Well, I think the FFA would be a great channel for that sort of thing. I was at an event the other day, and I sat with 8 FFA kids, and I was thinking to myself, these great minds with all this energy and all this interest in this, we should be, as much as I think it's fine to show pigs and cattle and do the FFA things and stuff like that. I really do. I don't mean that. I really mean that's fine. Like beyond that, a lot of these kids end up leaving agriculture, unfortunately, because the industrial channels are the only thing out there. So I would love it if there was a way. That's why I'm saying if there's a way to, I think about this all the time, but I don't know. Maybe I don't talk to enough people about it. Just a way to get landholders who are conscious of these issues, thinking about some kind of a way to channel their properties into the hands of young people who have the passion and the energy to run and to do great things on the land. That's that's how we do it. People on the land. It's a heartbreak to me when I see these, 2,000 acre gigantic fields and you see no house. And some people won't agree with me on that, but people on land who live on a place, they show affection and care for it. It's theirs. It's not something they just lease and drive a big tracked machine across, breaking it up and putting seeds in it once a year and then taking, and cutting it down at the end of the year. There's a whole different level of affection people have if they live on property.
I agree. Eric, who is a fellow farmer, if you didn't catch that yet, Eric Stickdorn, he asked do you read Acres? Acres? Yes. I don't know what that is myself.
This is why I love this. Is Acres a magazine, a publication?
Yeah, I'm not sure, Eric. You want to let us know? I'm not quite sure myself.
I don't, but I will.
Yes, he said it's a magazine.
All righty, I'm writing it down. I'm writing all of this down. This is how we network. This is how we learn about things.
He said Charles Walters started it.
Okay, very good.
And Sam had mentioned that what you're talking about sounds like a land trust for small sustainable agriculture. Yes.
It's a good idea. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's a very good idea.
Well, thank you, Hunter, first of all, for being so generous with your time. I know how busy you are. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you so much.
Everyone. Thank you so much.